What makes many older adults skip meals is not that they run out of money, but that one day, they no longer have the strength to cook. Most food money is not lost at the supermarket. It disappears very quietly inside your own refrigerator. A loaf of bread covered in mold, a bunch of overripe bananas, a few boxes of forgotten vegetables, each time only a few dollars, but repeated over many months, it becomes a real loss. And the worst day is not when you have no food. It is when you have food, but no strength to cook. That is why the most valuable thing in the kitchen is not fresh food. It is what has already been prepared in the freezer. Because sometimes, what keeps a person from collapsing on their weakest day is not medicine, just a meal that was waiting in advance. With only 10 properly chosen frozen foods, you can save money, save time, and sometimes save yourself on a very bad day. These are those 10 foods. 10. Berries. One of the things thrown away the most in the kitchen is actually the food considered the healthiest. Fresh fruit. Just a few forgotten days in the refrigerator, the strawberries begin to soften, the blueberries wrinkle, and then everything quietly ends up in the trash. Each loss is only a few very small dollars, almost insignificant. But when that repeats over many months, the money that silently disappears becomes far greater than we imagine. Berries are also one of the best foods to freeze. When washed clean, drained, and flash frozen before being placed into sealed bags, they can preserve almost their entire fresh flavor for many months. More importantly, you can use them immediately. No thawing, no complicated preparation. In just a few seconds, they are already in a bowl of morning oats, a simple cup of yogurt, or a gentle smoothie on a day when the body feels tired. It is a very small but clear way to save time every day. Someone once shared that. On the morning they had the worst cold of the year, the kitchen was so quiet that even standing up became difficult. They did not have the strength to cook anything. The only thing they could do was open the freezer, take out a bag of fruit prepared many weeks earlier, and press the blender button. Not a complicated meal, not expensive food, just a very simple smoothie. But in the weakest moment, that quiet preparation became the thing that made that day much easier. From a financial perspective, the benefit is also clear in a very quiet way. Buying fruit in season at a lower price and freezing it is always cheaper than purchasing it fresh year-round. You no longer have to throw away spoiled portions, and you do not have to pay extra for the convenience of out-of-season produce. These small savings do not attract attention immediately, but when accumulated over time, they are enough to create a real difference. Freezing sometimes is not just a way to preserve food. It is a quiet way to preserve time, preserve money, and more importantly, preserve the feeling that even on the most exhausting days, you still have something ready to care for you. Because sometimes, the thing that helps us get through the worst day is simply what we manage to prepare on a completely ordinary day. 9. Ripe bananas. The thing thrown away most often in many kitchens is also one of the easiest foods to save. Ripe bananas. A few bananas sit quietly on the table, their peels darkening day by day. No one wants to eat them once they are no longer perfect, like when they were first bought. And then they quietly disappear into the trash, along with a very small feeling of regret. One time is insignificant, but when it repeats week after week, that silent waste becomes far greater than we imagine. Ripe bananas are actually one of the best foods to freeze. You only need to peel them, cut them into pieces, and place them in a sealed bag to preserve an ingredient for many quick and simple dishes. Morning smoothies, warm banana bread, or a light snack when your body no longer has much energy. No need to prepare again. No need to wait. Just open the freezer and everything is ready. And that readiness clearly saves time on the most exhausting days. One viewer once wrote that after his wife passed away, he began living alone and often had to throw away bananas because he could not eat them in time, until he tried freezing them. From then on, every morning he only needed to place a few banana slices into the blender with milk, and breakfast was ready in less than a minute. He said what changed was not only the money saved each week, but the feeling that the kitchen was still warm, even though only one person remained in the house. From a financial perspective, the benefit is also clear in a very quiet way. Buying bananas when they are on sale and then freezing them helps you almost completely eliminate waste. These small savings do not attract attention immediately, but when accumulated over time, they create a difference large enough to feel. Saving money, saving time, and preserving more than we realize. Because sometimes, the thing you plan to throw away today is actually the gentle meal that will help you get through a very exhausting morning on some future day. If you are also trying to keep your daily meals a little lighter and easier, press like and subscribe. Not to watch more videos, but so that we can grow older together in a calmer way. 8. Bread. There is something very familiar in many kitchens. Bread is always bought with the best intentions, yet it is often the first thing to be thrown away. After only a few days on the shelf, the slices begin to dry out. Small spots of mold appear before we even notice, and the whole loaf ends up in the trash with a very light sense of regret. So light that we assume it does not matter. But when this repeats every week, that quiet waste slowly becomes a real loss over time. Few people realize that bread is also one of the best foods to freeze. Simply place the whole loaf or individual slices into a sealed bag and store them in the freezer, and you can keep them fresh for many weeks. When needed, a slice can thaw in just a few minutes, or go straight into the toaster and return to a warm, crisp state almost like new. No trip to the store, no complicated preparation. That simplicity clearly saves time on busy mornings. One mother once shared that, during the most difficult years of her life, she always kept a few loaves of bread in the freezer. There were mornings when a phone call announced a sick child. Everything became rushed, and she no longer had time to prepare breakfast. With just a few thawed slices of bread, a little peanut butter, or a quickly fried egg, breakfast was ready before the family even had time to panic. She said the thing that kept her calm was not money, but the feeling that she had prepared one very small thing in advance. From a financial perspective, the benefit is also clear in a very quiet way. Freezing bread almost eliminates the need to throw away loaves that were never finished. The small amounts of money saved each week may go unnoticed, but over time, they create a real difference. Saving money, saving time, and easing a familiar worry that appears every single morning. Because sometimes, what helps us get through a rushed morning is not something big, just a warm slice of bread that has been waiting in the freezer since long before that day arrived. 7. Pre-cut vegetables. The thing that exhausts many people most about cooking is not the cooking itself. It is the preparation. Standing long enough to peel a carrot, bending down to pick up a few fallen garlic cloves, or simply holding a knife for a few extra minutes can sometimes be enough to make an evening feel heavier than expected. That change does not arrive loudly. It comes very slowly, through days when the body has just a little less energy, moments of having to sit down halfway through cutting vegetables, or the quiet realization that even a simple meal is no longer as easy as it once was. That is why pre-cut, frozen vegetables become one of the smallest yet most important preparations in the kitchen. Just a few bags of chopped onions, garlic, carrots, or greens resting in the freezer, and a meal can begin in only a few minutes. No long standing, no starting preparation all over again. That simplicity does not only save time, it also preserves the body's precious energy for more important things. One viewer once shared that after a long course of treatment, what frightened her most was not the illness, but the feeling of no longer having the strength to cook for herself. Until her daughter began preparing small portions of cut vegetables in the freezer. Each evening, she only needed to place everything into a small pot. Listen to the gentle sound of water boiling beneath the quiet kitchen light, and a meal would still appear. Simple, warm, as if life had never become so difficult at all. If you are also trying to keep your daily meals just a little lighter, you can press like and subscribe to the channel. Not to follow more videos, but so we can remind each other to prepare calmly before the truly exhausting days arrive. Financially, the benefit is just as quiet. Preparing vegetables in advance helps significantly reduce the need to order takeout on the days when your body feels weakest. The small amounts of money saved each week may not be noticeable right away, but over time, they create a difference large enough to feel. Preparing in advance sometimes is not about cooking faster. It is so that one day, when the body grows weaker, what you still keep in the kitchen is not a complicated recipe, but the strength to cook for yourself a simple meal and to care for yourself in a very quiet way. 6. Cooked beans. On the days when money causes the greatest worry, what preserves a sense of calm is sometimes not a number in a bank account, but simply a very inexpensive meal already waiting in the kitchen. When the economy becomes difficult, the simplest foods quietly become the most valuable, not because they are special, but because they bring stability while everything else changes too quickly. Cooked beans are one very quiet example of this. With just one large pot prepared over the weekend, divided into small portions and neatly placed in the freezer, you already have a steady source of protein at a cost far lower than most familiar alternatives. When needed, they take only a few minutes to reheat, without starting from the beginning, without extra preparation effort, and they become especially valuable on days when the body is tired or the mind no longer has enough energy to stand in the kitchen for long. That small readiness is quietly saving both time and money in a way many people only recognize when life enters a new stage. One man once shared that after retiring earlier than expected, the first evening that made him feel uneasy was not because he immediately lacked money, but because the kitchen had become too quiet, as if he no longer controlled the familiar things of daily life. That Sunday night, he stood beside the stove for a long time, watching a pot of beans simmer gently under the yellow light, then quietly divided them into small containers and arranged them neatly in the freezer. Nothing dramatic happened, but the next morning, when he only needed to take out one portion and warm it for a few minutes, he said he felt a very clear, calm return, as if life were still within reach. What changed was not the amount of money saved, but the feeling that he could still take care of himself, even when everything around him was no longer as certain as before. Financially, the benefits of beans almost need no explanation. Low cost, long storage life, easy to combine into many different meals, and virtually no waste. The small savings each week may not be noticeable right away, but when accumulated over time, they become a stable enough foundation to help us feel less afraid of days when we do not know what will happen. Because sometimes, what keeps a person from panicking about tomorrow is not having a lot of money, but simply knowing that tonight, in their own kitchen, there is still a full meal waiting. 5. Cheese. There is a very familiar moment in the kitchen that few people notice. You open the refrigerator, see a piece of cheese with dry edges or the beginning of light mold, and stand still for a few seconds, wondering whether to keep it or throw it away. That decision is so small, it almost feels meaningless. Yet repeated enough times, it quietly turns careful shopping into an uncomfortable sense of waste. Because of that, many people choose to buy smaller, more expensive packages just to avoid facing that moment again. But when cheese is cut into ready-to-use portions and placed in the freezer from the very first day it comes home, the entire story changes in a very practical way. You no longer have to wonder each time you cook whether the remaining piece has spoiled, no longer have to rush to use it before it dries out, and no longer feel guilty about throwing away something that still has value. Each time you need it, you simply take out the exact portion, let it thaw gently, and continue cooking as if it had always been waiting there. This simplicity is quiet, but it removes many of the small decisions the brain must process every day, especially during a stage of life already filled with enough things to worry about. What matters is not the piece of cheese itself, but the way freezing turns the intention to save money into a real result. Buying in larger quantities is no longer a risk, but becomes a clear advantage. Fewer trips to the store, lower average cost, and always having ingredients ready to complete a quick meal when time or energy is limited. These changes sound very small, but they accumulate into a sense of order and control in the kitchen, something many people only recognize the value of when life begins to slow down. And sometimes, the comfort of a day does not come from anything big, but simply from opening the refrigerator and no longer feeling hesitation or regret, because everything inside is waiting to be used at the right time, in the right portion, and in line with the money you had already spent. 4. Cooked rice. There is a truth very few people talk about. Sometimes what causes a person to skip a meal is not the lack of food, but the lack of energy to begin cooking from the start. On days when the body is tired, the mind feels heavy, or the evening passes too quickly after a long day. Rinsing rice, waiting for the water to boil, and cleaning up afterward suddenly becomes a distance too far. And in those very small moments, eating habits begin to change in a quiet but lasting way. A portion of rice that has already been cooked and placed in the freezer is almost nothing special. It is not beautiful, not new, and not the kind of food people look forward to. But when reheated in a few minutes, it creates something more important than flavor. A meal that is still possible, even when you no longer have the strength to try. With just an egg, a bit of vegetables, or whatever remains in the refrigerator, a simple dinner can still be completed. And sometimes, continuing to eat a full meal like that is already a very large difference for health in the many years ahead. This is especially clear for people who live alone. No one reminds you to eat, no one waits at the table with you, and there is no pressure to prepare a proper meal. Because of that, the line between eating something quickly and skipping dinner entirely becomes very fragile. A small container of frozen rice in the freezer may sound ordinary, but on the day you feel most exhausted, it becomes like a very quiet reminder that this body is still worth caring for. No need for complexity, no need for perfection, only enough to maintain a stable rhythm of living. And perhaps the true value of frozen rice does not lie in saving time or money, but in keeping difficult days from slowly turning into a habit of neglecting yourself. Sometimes, the most enduring form of self-care begins simply with a reheated bowl of rice in silence. An elderly care doctor once said that many hospital admissions in older adults do not begin with serious illness. They begin with meals that were skipped for too long. not because they had no food, but because they no longer had the strength to cook. Skipping one evening meal seems very small, but when it repeats for many days, the body begins to weaken faster than we expect. And sometimes, what stops that downward slide is not medicine, just a small portion of rice that had been cooked in advance waiting in the freezer. 3. Meat bought on sale. The freezer is sometimes more than just a place to store food. It is like a very quiet way to preserve saving opportunities that, if missed, you would have to pay for at a much higher cost in the weeks that follow. Meat prices are rarely stable. There are days when they rise unexpectedly, and also moments when they drop sharply for only a very short time. Without preparation, you almost always have to buy at the most expensive moment, simply because dinner that evening still has to happen. But when you buy during a sale, divide the meat into small portions, and place them in the freezer, the story changes in a very clear way. You are no longer dependent on today's price. You can cook at any time without worrying that food is becoming more expensive. Over time, this small sense of control creates a financial difference large enough to feel in the monthly bill. One viewer once shared that he was a long-haul truck driver who returned home only once a month. Each time he came back, he prepared chicken, pork, and beef in advance, divided them into small portions, vacuum-sealed them, and froze them to take along on long trips. At first, it was simply a way to have a hot meal on the road. But after many years, he realized he had saved a significant amount of money just by not having to buy food in a hurry at expensive places. Even after he stopped driving, he kept the habit because it made life much simpler and more stable. What is most notable is that the greatest benefit of freezing meat does not lie in a single cheap purchase, but in the long-term stability it creates. Fewer urgent shopping trips, less pressure when prices rise, and always having ingredients ready to complete a proper meal when you need it. Sometimes, preparing in advance does not make life richer immediately, but it helps you avoid many rushed decisions. And those very decisions are what quietly make money disappear the fastest. 2. Soup and stews. Some values of preparing in advance are only understood on a very unexpected day. Not the day you cook that pot of soup, and not the day you place it in the freezer, but another morning when the body is exhausted, the throat is sore, and even standing up to pour a glass of water becomes slower than usual. I once heard the story of a woman living alone who, on a weekend afternoon when she was still healthy, cooked a large pot of soup simply because she thought she would keep a few portions in the freezer for busy days. With no special plan, just a very simple habit that many people often overlook. A few weeks later, she caught a severe cold. The house became quieter than usual. She no longer had the strength to cook and did not want to eat anything too heavy. And then she suddenly remembered the small containers of soup resting quietly in the freezer, needing only a few minutes to reheat to have a warm bowl of soup placed on the table. The steam rising very gently. But in that moment, it was not only food. It felt like a soft reminder that she had cared for herself many weeks earlier. There was no one there to take care of her. But that quiet preparation had done it instead. Soup and stews are not luxurious foods. They are soft, simple, easy to eat, and light enough for the body to accept even at its weakest. And when divided into portions and placed in the freezer, they preserve more than nutrition because they preserve the feeling of safety that on the hardest days, a warm meal is still waiting. Perhaps the true meaning of preparing in advance does not lie in saving time or money, but in the fact that when an unexpectedly weak day arrives, you do not have to face it in complete emptiness. Because sometimes the gentlest care you give yourself was quietly cooked many weeks earlier. 1. Prepared meals. The most surprising truth about freezing food is not that it keeps food longer, but that it can keep a person from collapsing on the very day they are most exhausted. Many people think preparing in advance is only a habit of those who are overly cautious, until they experience an evening when the body is drained, the mind is empty, and even thinking about what to eat becomes too much. In that very moment, a meal that had been cooked days earlier, resting quietly in the freezer, suddenly becomes something completely different from what was first imagined. With just a few minutes of reheating, a complete meal appears without decisions, without cooking, without long cleanup. And what is truly rescued is not time or money, but your state of mind that day. When the body is too tired, people easily choose quick solutions that are harmful to health, or worse, skip the meal entirely. And it is those small choices repeated many times that quietly erode strength over the years. A prepared portion in the freezer stops that downward slide in a very quiet way, because it makes self-care still possible, even when you no longer have the energy to try. This is the highest level of freezing, no longer about preserving food, but about protecting the stability of daily life. On busy days, exhausting days, or simply days when the spirit sinks without a clear reason, that meal does not only help you continue an ordinary evening, it also preserves something far more important: calm. And sometimes, the ability to keep calm on the hardest days is the quiet difference between a life that is fragile and a life that is still standing. The freezer is not only a place to store food, it is a place that holds your weakest days, your most exhausted moments, and the feeling that life is still within control. The most frightening thing about old age is not illness, but the day you no longer have the strength to cook a meal for yourself. Right now, in your freezer, what food is there? Share in the comments below. I read them all, and if you are preparing for life in a calm way, you can subscribe to the channel. Here, we do not talk about fear. We talk about quiet readiness.